this metaphor of sitting around the campfire, I think we found really works as a kind of almost like a quick what's the word, like a shortcut into the right sort of mental, spiritual attention space, um, to for it to be an insightful and uplifting experience to do these small group get-togethers, because it seems, in the informal surveys we've done, almost a universal experience.
I think,
Interestingly, in modernity, the sit around the campfire is something that almost all of us have done at some point.
yeah, and if we haven't literally done it, I struggle to imagine anybody in any culture that wouldn't have sat around a fire. But even if we haven't done that literally ourselves, I mean, it's an atavistic thing. There is, we're the children of fire as Homo sapiens. We have evolved
Mm.
by using fire to produce food, warmth, shelter, as a weapon, even. So it's really, really deep in us. And there's such a beautiful kind of rich set of attributes to it as a metaphor. So it's not only familiar, it provides both light and heat, which is quite interesting, or
Mm.
warmth perhaps rather than heat. When you sit around a fire in a circle, you're conscious that you're part of a whole, but it's not true that you can see everybody equally. So you can't necessarily see the person on the other side of the fire. So there's a kind of a togetherness, but also a kind of variation within it. And the light sort of fades away gradually. There's no sharp boundary. Although I think all of us, when we're around a campfire, we can feel when we're in the space that the fire is holding. And we know pretty sure
Mm.
when we've kind of stepped outside of it. We
Mm.
feel distant, we feel remote, we feel cool. So there's a kind of beautiful softness to that boundary, but there is a boundary. So it's a
Mm.
rich metaphor, I think.
Mm. What I mean, I like that, the relationship of the light and the dark and the boundary. And one of the the words that we both love in relationship to fire is the penumbra. Right? The penumbra being literally the kind of the almost darkness, but it's that vague boundary of where the darkness turns into light. And I think a lot of what the kind of the value and the insights of Basecamp is working inside that penumbra. What is the stuff that we aren't paying attention to?
Yeah.
Who are the people that have been missing from this conversation that can be brought in? What are some of the challenges in taking the sense of place and connection that we achieve around our campfire away from it,
Yeah.
into that? Like, I think there was so much about a relationship, not just with the fire and one another, but with the penumbra, that that this just gives us the opportunity to work with and explore.
Yeah. And I think it's working with that as well, accepting that however big the fire, there's always going to be the penumbra. You can build the fire up, you can wish for there to be even and uniform light everywhere, but there's just not going to be. So there's a kind of an acceptance and a willingness and a toleration of what is. And how can we work, as Theodore Roosevelt famously said, what can we do where we are with what we've got? There's that kind of sense of starting from where we are, not from idealized or romantic notions of what might be, and accepting that there are things that will always be beyond our direct control or direct perception even. So it carries that with it as well, I think.
So I mean, I really appreciate that you've been willing to kind of just give the time and sit down with me and for us to kind of try to articulate to one another what we've figured out so far about what we think this space is, and what we've observed about how to hold it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of cut this up and put it out.
Yep.
And I guess in the hope that people who find their way to Basecamp find it helpful. I imagine somehow that a year from now we would have even more of an understanding
Yeah, I agree. I think in the thing you just said, I think the words "so far" are very important, and I think they're important just to be clear about the fact that it's not that this is definitive and we know the answer, but I think they're important in that I think we'll always be saying that. I think that
Mm,
holding
mm,
spaces and gathering people together is more an art than a precise science. It's more a spirit than a technique. And I've learned over many years that while there are certain things that make a huge difference, often very small or very detailed, um, you can never presume that the same small details will make the same difference in another gathering. And so there's a
mm,
requirement to constantly be sensitive both to what you've learned and understood, but to how it's changing and evolving in
mm.
that particular way.
I love that you just said that because it kind of helps me to crystallize why, as we said, let's put something out there that can be of service to people who are coming to Basecamp, especially for the first time. And as we're thinking of the format to do that, it somehow felt falsely definitive to sort of put together a one pager.
That's right.
Or
Seven
even,
rules. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. But somehow a conversation uh, feels like the most honest expression
Yeah. Yeah.
of any attempt to codify, what this is and how to come to it, um, which in which also feels deeply somehow correct or
I agree.
right, given
Yeah.
that so much of what we do is conversation that doesn't strive to be perfect.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think, we could pose a question to anybody watching this who's not been to Basecamp before is, after looking at the material you've looked at or talking to whoever mentioned Basecamp to you in the first place and listening to as much of this as you've listened to, if you're still not really clear about it and you don't want to come, that's probably fine. And if you're still not really clear about it and you want to come, that's probably fine.
right.
But the answer
Mm,
is not in there being more clarity. It's you have to look at yourself in response to this and think, actually, am I drawn in and engaged by that slightly diffuse, slightly undefined nature of it, or do I know for sure that it's not for me because of that? And we're fine with both of those. We wouldn't want anybody who feels the latter to come to Basecamp, because there are plenty of spaces that operate in different ways, but this one very definitely operates in that space. And
mm,
so
mm.
that's the spirit we kind of invite people to come with, and to help us refine our understanding and see if we can, get more clarity while still staying open.
See you around the next campfire.
Yeah, right.